So I recently finished Girlfriend, my newest favorite story, and as I am wont to do, I've been watching/reading reviews of it, and it's come to my attention that next to no one talking about the story seems to understand it. The inciting incident of Girlfriend, written by Hiroyuki, is that high school boy Naoya has recently started dating his childhood friend Saki, and is soon thereafter confessed to by another girl, Nagisa, yes, like in 50% off. He decides to ask Saki if he can date both of them, and after some begging and shouting and pleading, she relents, and the three move in together to start their polyamorous relationship. Right from the start, people tend to form into one of two groups. One is, I am familiar with polyamory and the fact it's entered into by pressure is bad, and so the whole story is bad. The other is, wowie zowie, what a wacky out there concept for a turn your brain off comedy. These are both wrong. Those who see only a toxic relationship will miss the nuance of there being good mixed in with the bad, and will likely drop the story long before they get to see the growth that does come. Those who only see a brainless comedy will suffer for it once the story becomes more overtly serious. Girlfriend is tangibly about these kids trying very hard and hurting each other in the process of their first relationship because they are kids in the process of their first relationship. Thematically, it's about the ways determination can become twisted and how unchecked beliefs shape our actions, usually for the worse. It's a story that rewards taking it seriously and paying attention to details. To demonstrate, I'll go through episode 1 and how I experienced it as my introduction. We start with the scenario described before. Naoya has a girlfriend already and has been confessed to. Thinking back, Naoya informs us he tried asking Saki out but was turned down for years before recently she said yes. So he is very determined and also maybe not the best person. When we see the two interacting, at the first sign that he may have made her worried, Naoya immediately and grandly assures Saki that he loves her and will do all in his power to make sure she knows it. So is this really the same guy who, we might assume, didn't care about her feeling uncomfortable all those years she denied his advances? Well, let's see. Saki gets embarrassed at Naoya's declarations of love. Naoya says he's only trying to be honest, so why wouldn't he say he loves his girlfriend? Honesty is important to this guy. When he then asks if she really doesn't like it, Saki eventually says she actually does, and when he repeats his affections, Saki gives a hearty, right back at ya. So Saki has some issues with expressing and embracing her desires. She does love this weird, loud boy, but a part of her holds back on embracing it because it's weird. It's not normal. We move to the rooftop and a lovely young lady who later introduces herself as Minase Nagisa confesses her love to Naoya. Cue the OP. Anyway, she asks what he thinks of her looks-wise, and of course, as we expect, the honest Naoya says she's cute as hell. Nagisa is almost in tears hearing that, as she's apparently spent months working on this. That's 4 hours a day for exercise and yoga, 3 hours on hair, skin, and nails, and she'll soon give him food she made, stating that she practiced cooking for 8 hours a day. She also works a part-time job to make enough to get the best ingredients, and at this point, anyone doing the math will notice that adds up to more than 16 hours a day. Nagisa has devoted all her waking hours for months to prepare for this confession, which is more than a little concerning, so it's good that Naoya calls her on it. He asks firmly if she's really allowed time for herself, which she says yes to. But how would Nagisa have time for all this and school, one must wonder? Well, moving along. Despite the amazing food and clear amount of effort that went into it, Nagisa is turned down. Naoya already has a girlfriend, after all. But it doesn't end there, of course. Nagisa says she'll just have to ask again, and again, and again, until it works, which sounds suspiciously like how Naoya and Saki started dating, doesn't it? Naoya won't stand for this, however. He can tell Nagisa is serious, and he already has feelings for her, implicitly a combination of her attractiveness and her determination. But he won't go behind Saki's back. He's going to take Nagisa to Saki and ask if he can date them both. It's the only thing he can think of that'll honor both Saki and Nagisa. Nagisa, understandably, is caught off guard. She presumably expected that eventually in her asking attempts Naoya would leave his current girlfriend for her, not this, but she goes along with it anyway. So Naoya asks Saki to speak with him alone about something important. Shino, the purple girl Shino, tells Saki she knows what that probably means, embarrassing Saki again, who insists it won't be like that. And she's right, of course, it's to introduce her to Nagisa, and hang on, the way she's looking at her, the way Saki talks about her, and how she initiates an impromptu date with herself, Naoya, and Nagisa. Could it be, perhaps... well, anyway, Saki convinces Naoya that they can't talk to Nagisa about anything important till they go on a date. I mean, spend some time together. So Naoya doesn't say what he came here for until later on, after we see Nagisa fail hard at karaoke and basketball. I wonder, is she bad at all these things because she spent so much time just on stuff she thought would impress Naoya? Well, first, Naoya's getting to the point after being delayed. Saki says she would love to date a girl like Nagisa, which is pretty gay, not gonna lie. But when Naoya says he too would like to date, specifically Nagisa, she goes very quiet and asks him to explain his thought process. Naoya tells her dating one or both behind the other's back would be dishonest, and he wants things to be fair and equitable. Saki punches him, a rather direct way of expressing her dislike of the idea. Saki wonders why Nagisa is so okay with this, and that's a great question. What she says is that she loves Naoya as he is, so she'll only be rejected if he doesn't date both of them, which you may notice is not exactly saying she's a huge fan either. In fact, it almost seems like she's going along with whatever Naoya wants, so long as it means she gets to be with him. Naoya and Nagisa now take turns begging and bribing Saki to get her to agree to polyamory. Naoya again says it wouldn't be fair to abandon one of the people he loves for the other. Specifically not fair to any of them. He does not say it's just not fair to him. By now it should be clear Naoya's idea of fairness is a pretty literal interpretation of equality. Stepping out of the first watch perspective for a moment, understanding the assumptions and underlying beliefs characters have is going to become more and more relevant as time goes on. This is just one of the most obvious examples. Eventually, Naoya promises that one day they'll be glad they both decided to date him, and this tips the scales and gets Saki to say she's okay with them maybe trying out polyamory. This very much is not the ideal setup for a healthy polyamorous relationship, to be pressured into it, or to go along with it because you can't see any other way. And that's fine, I think. From a narrative, I mean. Naoya and Nagisa, and Saki as well, are trying their best to do the right thing. And Naoya has explained why he thinks this is right, even if he's missing the way Saki is being coerced. He's not perfect. None of the characters in this story will be. But that's kids for you. So they move in together, also Naoya's idea, so that they can all become closer. He wants them to get along. How could this work if they don't, after all? There's definitely no other ways to accomplish that goal. The setup is Nagisa does the cooking, Naoya does the cleaning, and Saki enjoys the other two's labor. After dinner, and after an overeager Naoya offers to rub Saki's back as well, she's in the bath contemplating that maybe this will be a good thing, when Nagisa interrupts her. She says that Saki can do all the sex stuff she wants, but this ends up getting Saki to admit that she and Naoya haven't actually done any sex stuff yet, nor even kissed, which clearly makes Saki feel weird. Not helping is that Nagisa seems to be happy that Saki and Naoya haven't done much physically. Saki deflects, though, by saying that she's known Naoya a long time and understands that he's weird about this stuff. This comment will make a bit more sense in the next scene, though, so let's go there. Saki demands to know how far he wants to go with Nagisa physically, and, being honest, Naoya says he'd like a threesome. Also being honest, Saki says that Nagisa makes her feel things too. And I'm a woman, she says. So, like, she's obviously and explicitly attracted to Nagisa, but thinks it's weird for a girl to have such feelings. Going back a bit, though, Naoya says he would enjoy a threesome, but because Saki is clearly uncomfortable with that idea, he declares that there will be no threesomes, and in fact no sex at all, until they're more established in their relationship. Now, it's not odd for an anime boy protagonist to be sexless, especially one in high school like Naoya. However, Naoya is honest and determined, well established by now. He didn't give up on Saki, he didn't give up on getting Nagisa into the relationship, and yet now, when he's stated that he wants to sex them both at the same time, but whatever, he gives up. I'm not saying he shouldn't, it's the right move to back off here, and it's not like he has no reasons of his own for creating the sex ban, but you've got to think of this in light of Saki's line in the bath about how he's weird about sex stuff. It's not super clear yet, But there's definitely something up in that area. Oh, and ending off the episode, we have Nagisa being okay to go along with the sex ban, and Saki being so evidently distraught that Naoya picks up on it and apologizes for making her abstain, which Saki tries to brush off by saying that's not the point, which is more being awkward about her desires, obviously, and Nagisa going along with whatever lets her stay near Naoya. Phew! I'm not going to go that in-depth with every episode, at least not yet. I just want to be clear how much is going on with these characters that'll be missed if you're not paying attention. There's even more that you won't be able to see on your first watch, too. Like, Saki having trouble expressing her desires, especially related to sex and romance, is the basis for her 100-plus chapter arc about recognizing and changing that. Likewise, her obviously being bi but having internalized biphobia, not thinking of it as a valid or real option, will be explored throughout the manga. Nagisa going along with everything as long as she gets to stay with Naoya is based in deeper insecurities that have not yet been revealed, and she'll do her best to overcome those. Saki's line about Naoya being weird about sex stuff will get fleshed out more as it becomes clear he has some sex-negative ideas internalized, which run up against Saki, shown to be way less comfy giving up sex here, who has expectations and assumptions about sex that are more positive. Well, in some senses. Naoya thinking of equality is literally about giving everyone the exact same thing is the start of seeing Naoya's well-meaning but skewed perspectives on things, which will get himself and others hurt. And of course, the entire way determination is presented in this first episode. Naoya was so determined that he asked Saki out for years, and finally got a yes. Nagisa put a lot into her confession, and says she'll ask Naoya over and over again to be her boyfriend until he says yes, and they both asked Saki over and over again to accept the polyamorous relationship, to which she eventually said they can try. Naoya clearly admires Nagisa's determination, and it seemed that Saki was happy having accepted Naoya's final proposal to date after years and years of rejection. This, I know, will not be enough to convince everyone it was a good thing to do, but don't worry, the story will address that as well. Saki is being pressured into the relationship at the end, but it's with the best of intentions. This is a big theme being set up. The determination can be good, but it's also not inherently good, and it can get people hurt too. It's both. I've said to people before that the hook of girlfriend is that Naoya does the right thing, asking permission to date both Saki and Nagisa, but he does so in a kind to bad way. It's that combination of trying really hard and getting people hurt that I think is so true to life when writing about relationships of young kids like these characters. You might not expect it if you've heard other people talk about the show, but this story will only get more real and you will cry. Or, well, I did anyway. If I've sold you and you want to go watch/read Girlfriend, yay! You can come back later. If not, or if you don't mind hearing more spoilers from beyond episode 1, stick around. I've got a lot more I want to talk about in detail. Nagisa and unfair expectations. Nagisa's arc is about learning to be kind to herself, because at the start she kind of very hates herself. She holds herself to impossible standards and berates herself when she inevitably fails to reach them. Case in point, nearly the first thing we learn about her is she's devoting her entire waking hours to making herself appealing to Naoya. Naoya, rightfully, tells her she should allow some time for herself, and while she says she does, what she likely means is that if this work allows her to be with him, then it will be to her benefit. Of course, as a reader, we should know that there's more to life than a romantic relationship, and that she doesn't need to be useful, let alone perfect, to be accepted as a person nor romantic interest. But Nagisa doesn't know that yet. So when she fell in love with Naoya for his determination, she decided she too would become determined in pursuit of him. The thing is, she was already really determined. See, Nagisa has a learning disability that makes it very hard to be even average at anything. Be it school, video games, sports, cooking, you name it. Despite that, she's devoted between 500 and 1,000 hours to countless pursuits. None bore fruit because, learning disability. But after that moment, she decided to try cooking again. And after even more months of trying, she did get good at it. It should be noted that this is not determination magically curing her disability. It's that she gave herself more time to figure it out, and eventually that worked out. Anyone else could have reached Nagisa's level in much less time. She didn't overcome her disability by trying real hard. Nagisa just thinks she did. Anyway, when Naoya does accept her feelings, and they get into a polycule together with Saki, Nagisa backs off. That is to say, she doesn't pursue any of her desires for what to do now that she's actually in the romantic relationship with Naoya, because in her mind, being his, perhaps anyone's girlfriend, is more than she deserves already. She talks about being a burden on Saki and not wanting to get in the way, as if somehow she's not just as much Naoya's girlfriend as she is. Eventually, Naoya recognizes / finds out that Nagisa has been holding back and confronts her about it, and with Saki's help, they get Nagisa to start taking an active role in her own relationship, which is good. Accepting external love is a really important step for her, but the hurt goes deeper. After Saki has finally had her first kiss with Naoya, Nagisa wants her first kiss with him to be perfect. Let's set aside that the reason Saki's kiss was so passionate and dramatic came about because of unfortunate events one would never want to replicate. The idea that someone's first anything can or should be perfect is absurd, and it hurts to see her worrying about such a thing. She eventually gets over this and, in a show of great restraint from the mangaka, has her first kiss with Naoya off-screen, exemplifying that it's really not that big a deal. Yet still, she continues to berate herself for being imperfect, agonizing over what to put down for her future aspirations in school. She gets mad at herself for having no aspirations aside from loving Naoya, and when Naoya himself offers to help pay for cooking school as an alternative, she berates herself for being a moocher. Let it be known that depending on others is not weakness. Nagisa's belief is wrong and it only serves to hurt herself. She goes even further, though, saying that she gives up on everything immediately, and that the one thing she likes doing, cooking, she's not even good at. Both of these are patently untrue. We know Nagisa devotes hundreds upon hundreds of hours to her efforts, because she herself said so, and that her cooking is phenomenal, because everyone who tastes it says it's amazing. But she still thinks of herself as worthless. Bad at everything, because she's not even better, because she's not making the best food in the world and not overcoming her disability to surpass everyone else. It's a toxic capitalistic mindset that says people's worth is in how much and how quickly they can produce, and it's shown over and over again to hurt her. Nagisa's mother and Naoya eventually get through to her, getting Nagisa to accept both the things she's good at and, importantly, that she's allowed to receive help. Of course, in a perfect world, Nagisa's needs would be met by, the government or broader community aid, but it's something. Those around her are there to combat Nagisa's self-loathing and help her out where society fails to. And it's not like this completely eliminates her internal struggles. There's other moments like her trying to plan a generic date instead of one she would actually want that show hints of her self-loathing and unfair expectations remaining. But that's life. These things take time to unlearn. More time than the story covers. It's sad watching her beat herself up so much, but that much more satisfying to see her slowly grow out of such patterns. Mirika and breaking boundaries. Mirika is Naoya's perfect foil. Both are hardworking, determined, and never give up, even in the face of rejection, with a few crucial differences. Naoya is honest to a fault, while Mirika is deceitful. Naoya's determination is often seen as noble, while Mirika's is hurtful. And importantly, Naoya doesn't care what people generally think of him, and Mirika definitely does. Mirika enters the story intent on having some fun blackmailing a few freaks she finds. When that doesn't work, she wants instead to get this weirdo boy to be her boyfriend for protection against would-be stalkers. Unfortunately for her, this isn't just any weird boy, it's Naoya, so he rejects her and she does not take that well. Mirika sees herself as above someone who would two-time, and above the girls Naoya is dating as well. To be rejected in favor of them insults her pride, and she's determined to make him hers and hers alone just to get the external validation she feels denied. You can see it in how she talks about her YouTube channel as well. She parades around how many subscribers she has as proof that others like her. And that's not to say she hasn't worked hard to achieve that, but it seems that she needs others to tell her she's good and cute at everything instead of simply believing it about herself inherently. When she doesn't have others agreeing, she compensates with self-aggrandizement. So to the end of getting the validation of being Naoya's girlfriend, she camps out in his yard, to everyone's disapproval. Since we know that Naoya and Saki and Nagisa are 100% not okay this, we get to see what romantic determination looks like when it is not wanted. When it's crossing clear boundaries. And it's bad. Mirika is the main avenue the story uses to criticize determination, but I'll get into that more in a later section. For now, things only get worse when Mirika actually falls in love with Naoya, upon realizing that 1. He's actually a good person and not some pervert who wants a harem, and 2. Defends Mirika from her father trying to delete her YouTube channel, recognizing all the hard work she put in and openly valuing her agency. Then things escalate. Mirika kisses Naoya without consent, drugs him and later the other girls as well, kidnaps Naoya, blackmails Shino, tricks Naoya into letting her live with him and the other girls, a whole host of awful things, with no regard for anyone's boundaries. No one's, including her own. See, the whole time, Naoya's been adamant about saying no to her advances, to which Mirika will often escalate things sexually, offering him sex or sexual things like kissing or groping as a way to prove that she has good things to offer him. Except, Mirika doesn't want that. She said it clearly that she doesn't want to join the polycule, but this is a tad more subtle. Every time Mirika escalates things sexually, she gets super uncomfortable, though she doesn't back down. These are her 2 main boundaries. She wants to be monogamous, and she wants to take sexual things slowly. But time after time, she gets rejected and then responds by trying sexual things, which thankfully get rebuked. Well, except the time she forcefully kissed Naoya. No one had a good time about that. Mirika crossed her own boundaries, and Naoya's, and Saki and Nagisa felt bad they weren't Naoya's first kiss. Then about halfway through the story, Naoya tells Mirika that she needs to stop pursuing him, or else she'll end up getting hurt. This does nothing to deter her, however, because on top of her pride, Mirika has this underlying belief that she, or even people in general, can't be truly happy if they aren't in a romantic relationship with a person they love. Now, of course, accepting rejection when you really love someone can be rough, but it's decidedly not the end of the world and does not doom people to a life of unhappiness. There are other people to love and spend your time with, and there are other relationships to cherish, not to mention other things in general to prioritize in life. But Mirika doesn't know that yet, so she persists. In her pursuit, Mirika considers another line she has, one which she figured she'd eventually have to cross, but hasn't yet, revealing her true identity publicly on YouTube. Previously, a secret she valued so well that Nagisa very effectively blackmailed her with evidence of much earlier. She ends up blowing past this boundary in some rather direct foreshadowing for where things are headed for her romantically. Her feelings get through to Naoya. He confesses his love, and for a moment, it seems that maybe it all paid off. All the grueling survivalism, all the hurting anyone who got in her way, and crossing those boundaries she had. Finally, Mirika will be repaid for her determination. Of course not. She's rejected again, and she cries. She cries so much. And in an act of desperation, she crosses another line she never wanted to. She goes on a final live stream, cries her heart out to Naoya and all the others watching that she will delete her YouTube channel to prove just how far she's willing to go to win Naoya's monogamy. And Naoya, moved by her words, rushes over, and he changes his mind. He will accept Mirika as a partner in the polycule. The same one Mirika made a clear boundary about not wanting to be part of. The one she explicitly explained she would hate and feel lonely in such a situation. But Naoya's determination wins out over hers, and she accepts this fate. It's a tragic ending, but fitting as the conclusion to this story of twisted determination and ignoring her own boundaries. She didn't deserve it by any means, it's just in line with the rest of the story, where people's preconceived notions about how things ought to be end up hurting themselves and others. We knew at least halfway through that if she didn't give up, Mirika would get herself hurt, and that's exactly what happened. Shino and the status quo. Shino, more than anyone else, believes that there is an order to things. All the characters do to some extent, which I'll talk about in a later section, but Shino is the most explicit about her beliefs. Social hierarchy, monogamy, and traditional employment, these and more are structures that, in her mind, should be obeyed and maintained at any cost. When we are properly introduced to Shino, she's trying to find out if Saki is being two-timed. Shino wants to ensure Saki's happiness, and her only conception of multiple people dating one person is cheating, so of course she wants to find out if that's happening and put a stop to it. As she gets closer and closer to discovering that Saki is indeed in a polycule, Shino starts confronting Naoya with issues presented by attempting to date two people at once, all of which are really limitations and biases of the system Shino seeks to uphold. There's a social stigma stopping him from being honest with Nagisa and Saki's families. There's no ability to gain marriage benefits for everyone. It'll be harder to financially support them both, those kinds of things. And beyond these, Shino believes that monogamy is the only way to be happy in a romantic relationship. Then, in chapter 45, there's a kind of twist, so to speak. We learn that this whole time, and even before we met Shino, she's been in love with Naoya too. All her efforts, one might think, were then not about everything she said, but only and instead about trying to get over her crush on her best friend's boyfriend. But the thing is, those aren't in conflict. The reason Shino wants so desperately to get over her crush, and goes to great lengths to hide her feelings for Naoya, is an unspoken social contract that people shouldn't romantically pursue their friends' paramours. That and the aforementioned belief that people can't be happy outside of monogamy. For Saki to ever know that her best friend harbored love for Naoya would inevitably hurt Saki, Shino believes. And so she never talks about it, deceiving everyone she can to ensure that secret stays secret. Her fear, truly, is that she'll accept polyamory as valid, and the breaking of that sacred pillar will lead to her hurting her best friend. And now, a brief tangent on Shino's many accidental pervert moments. Before the twist, the irony of Shino often ending up in loose situations with Naoya is that she's the one trying hardest to break up his relationship. After, things become more complex, as it's kind of the story/author/universe presenting Shino with situations akin to what she wants, to be sexual to Naoya, while she tries harder and harder to deny those feelings. Every lewd accident is Shino being confronted with her desires, the ones that break her idea of herself as this perfect upstanding member of society, and her choosing to remain deceptive about them. Keep in mind this is a narrative. In real life, of course, the universe doesn't manifest your repressed desires. Things happen this way because it's a story trying to say things. And to be perfectly clear, it's upsetting to see Shino end up in sexual situations she doesn't want to be in and has little agency over. Is bad to see, but I don't think it takes away from the message. In fact, if anything, the fact that it's upsetting helps us feel more for her. And now, back to our main Shino analysis. Of course, most of the structures Shino holds dear aren't so sacred. When she freaks out about almost kissing an unconscious Naoya, that's correct. Consent is important. But monogamy, the job market, social rules, heteronormativity, these are all made up and just restrict people from being happy. But Shino doesn't know that yet, so she makes up excuses. That is to say, Shino often needs to create justifications for her actions to carry on believing that she's acting in accordance with her own principles. There's the external lying to her friend to keep up the status quo, but also consider that when Saki first met her, Shino believed that since they were on different social classes, they couldn't be friends. When Saki persisted in being nice to her, Shino relented and accepted her friendship, but only after justifying it with the notion that she was looking after someone who needed her help. Later on, after Shino learns that Saki has still never kissed her boyfriend, despite all the time they've shared, Shino convinces herself now that this means Saki doesn't truly love Naoya, which would make it justifiable for Shino to pursue him. This comes to a head when later Saki does kiss Naoya in front of Shino, proving to her that all her justifications were just pretty lies and she's been pursuing the kind of path she believes can only lead to ruin. In the aftermath, Shino tries to abandon Saki's life entirely rather than be honest and break the facade, and presumably in her mind hurt her. I'm gonna say that again. Shino thought it was better to have no friendship than one where she and Saki both liked the same guy. To be clear, it's not so abstract as, oh, this goes against the way reality should be ordered, so it's bad. It's more like going against the order of the world invariably hurts people, so I can't do it. Naturally, attempting to leave her best friend doesn't go over well, and that itself ends up hurting Saki. And when the truth does come out, it doesn't really affect Saki. All this jumping through hoops to uphold some idealized notion of relationships is what's actually hurting people. What further does upset Saki, though Shino doesn't seem to notice, is when Shino insists that it's stupid to think she would have confessed romantic feelings to her. 'Cause girls can't really love girls, right? Just like being happy in a polyamorous relationship isn't possible, and knowing your friend likes the same boy as you can't end well, right? When at last Shino is allowed and allows herself to pursue her true feelings and finally abandons her notions of what ought to be, she's clearly much happier. Turns out honesty and sincerity are more important to happiness than made-up rules. She even confidently talks about wanting to see Naoya be okay with 3-timing, so that she and Saki can both be with the one they love. It's still couched in language that frames polyamory negatively, but of course it is. That's how she grew up. By the end of the story, she also still seems to maybe have reservations that people can be happy or successful in non-traditional jobs, but that's to be expected too. She has more to learn and unlearn, but there's also a huge amount of progress. Naoya and the limits of sincerity. Naoya does not understand other people. Don't get me wrong, he has many great qualities. He's honest, determined, sincere, and he sees the good in everyone he meets. It's Naoya who finally convinces Shino that honesty among friends will improve and not break a good relationship. It's Naoya who convinces Nagisa that being true to her feelings will make both her and him more happy. It's Naoya that points out to both Mirika and her father just how impressive it is that she's gotten so popular on YouTube as a mere child. And there's more! Getting Saki to accept her enjoyment of Naoya's intense love, rejecting Nagisa's generic date in favor of what she really wants, admiring Shino's care for her friends even while Shino herself is dealing with self-hatred, telling Mirika over and over that he will not betray his partners and that she'd be better off giving up on him. Right from the start, it's good that Naoya is open about his attraction to Nagisa with Saki, and that he always answers people truthfully even if social convention would suggest keeping embarrassing or difficult things hidden. But he assumes everyone is always being honest too, so he doesn't consider that they might be holding things back, or that they may even be lying. It's good that he tries his hardest to do good by people, but he can end up directing his efforts in unhelpful or hurtful ways. It's good that he sees the best in people, but this can lead to him respecting people's wishes when they're less than noble at heart. At the core of these issues is that while Naoya is sincere, that is, he's true to his principles, without a good understanding of other people, he ends up hurting others unintentionally. He explains to Saki his sincere feelings and beliefs leading him to wanting a polyamorous relationship, and, despite her trying to protest, Naoya doesn't give up, and pressures her into it anyway, because it's what he sincerely believes to be the best. There are words said about how he thinks on some level polyamory, or 2-timing, as he calls it, is bad, but what's more important in his mind is treating these people he loves both equally. And while that's good in theory, the result is that he disregards Saki's feelings to reach that sincere conclusion. This continues in the relationship proper, where his showing Nagisa equal affection makes Saki self-conscious about whether Naoya really loves her as much. When he tries to assuage her fears by saying there'll be no sex, this just makes things worse because of Saki's already extant anxieties around sexual stuff in her boyfriend. His convictions about honesty almost result in him breaking a promise to keep the relationship secret not too long after, which pretty obviously upset Saki as well. Jumping ahead a bit, Naoya's respect for Mirika's determination results in him agreeing, on behalf of everyone else in the house, to allow her to live with them all and to give her months to convince him to fall in love with her. Given Mirika has been awful to everyone, this naturally upsets them all, but Naoya doesn't really notice. And, as stated in the previous section, this eventually results in Naoya convincing Mirika to accept dating him in the polycule when she really doesn't want that. When his mother confronts him about determination not being enough for a good relationship, Naoya decides to prove his determination can achieve real results by trying to get perfect scores on some tests. This will be impressive, sure, but ultimately not addressing the issue at hand. As much as it impresses the girls, too, and as much as Naoya thinks this is the best course of action, he's missing the big picture here, which is that building the relationship itself is the important thing. But see, in his mind, he'll be convincing himself that he can do anything with determination, so he believes that everyone else will think this too after he aces his tests. And there's many more examples, but this conflict between Naoya's sincerity and his ability to actually affect positive change is highlighted excellently in two parallel scenes. The first is the first time Saki runs back home due to her being so upset about the current state of their relationship. Naoya spends days trying everything to get her back. He writes a super long essay on what he loves about her, spends a bunch of money on her favorite gacha game, buys her lots of cakes, takes pictures of cute dogs and cats, summarizes her schoolwork, but none of it takes. He's trying really hard, to the point where he doesn't sleep for 3 days getting together all these extravagant gestures, much to Nagisa's dismay, I might add. And in the end, it's Nagisa and not Naoya who breaks through to Saki. Putting Naoya's hand on her boob is what gets Saki to come back over and actually talk. The second moment is fittingly the second time Saki runs back home. But this time, she's thought much longer about the relationship, so it's even more dire. Naoya has since learned not to just throw big gifts at her, so instead he, comparatively politely, knocks on her door every day, and every day gets turned away by Saki's mother. When Saki eventually does come out, she talks to Naoya alone, and when they're in the bath together, and she asks him if he wants to see her naked, he says no, because he thinks acting on his sexual desires is a bad thing. This doesn't go over well with Saki, who very much does not think that about Naoya's sexual desires. What does get through to her, again, is not anything Naoya does or says, but what Nagisa and Shino say. They tell her that if it's really too much to bear, they will leave Naoya's side and let her be monogamous. This is something Naoya would never do, and he says as much when this line is dropped. The girls say they know Naoya would never think of giving up as an option, but hey, in the end, that's what works things out. More or less. I'm glossing over this bit because I'll go in more depth in Saki's part. In both of these cases, and in countless others, Naoya is being true to himself, sincere to the highest degree. He's incredibly determined to make things right, to make Saki happy, so he does everything he can think of. He's honest about his feelings and why he's doing what he's doing. He tells her all the great things he loves about her, and in a vacuum, this is good stuff. But none of this is what Saki actually needs. It doesn't help her at all. It was said in Anime Out of Context's review of Girlfriend Girlfriend that being true to yourself doesn't excuse being an asshole, which is very close to getting the point. But Naoya's problem is not malice, it's ignorance. Naoya legitimately does not understand anyone being unlike himself, as exemplified when Mirika has to explain to him first that she does in fact love him, and later that there are people who are not polyamorous like he is. He knows he doesn't like himself being in love with multiple girls at once, because society has taught him that's bad, so he thinks Mirika would hate this about him too. He knows that he has a seemingly infinite capacity for love, so he doesn't get that other people can feel lonely when put in a poly relationship. In the other direction, Naoya often disregards himself when trying to help others, because he doesn't think very highly of himself, so why would anyone else? Of course, the people who love him see these self-destructive acts and get rightly worried about him. To his confusion, other people are not him, but Naoya doesn't know that yet. So in his endless pursuit to do good, people get hurt in ways he doesn't foresee. This is the limit of sincerity. You can be as honest and true as you like, but if you can't really take other people into account, you'll risk only doing right by you and not them. And even then, sometimes you'll get hurt too. Naoya is slowly taught some ways that people around him are different to himself, and so ways that he can be more considerate of them. But it's a problem that's left mostly unsolved. I truly believe Naoya is a good person and that he tries his best, but like everyone else, he still has a lot to learn. Saki and conflicting desires. Saki struggles with her own desires. This might not be immediately obvious to viewers/readers who see her loudly try to oppose the polycule in the first place, but it's there from the start. As previously discussed, Saki initially pushes back against Naoya expressing his love for her in public, but eventually agrees that she likes to receive big expressions of love. She feels embarrassed about wanting things, but she does in fact want them. Then there's the other side, her anxieties about being inferior and losing her boyfriend. When her anxiety is winning, Saki will be very vocal about what she wants to not happen. She tells Naoya to his face that not only should he not want a threesome, but he shouldn't even say the word, because she's afraid that then he'll like Nagisa more once he's experienced her sexually. It's this push and pull between her anxiety and her trouble with embracing her desires that shapes her actions throughout the story. When she's anxious, she's loud and open, but when she's more calm, she's quiet and shy. Those familiar with anime might recognize this character type as a tsundere, which is accurate, but I worry that when I hear people describe Saki as a typical tsundere, they're treating her like an overdone trope and not a character. Saki is not a tsundere simply to have jokes about her punching a guy and then blushing while saying, "Not that I like you, baka." Saki does punch Naoya, and Girlfriend is in some ways a comedy, but that's not the bit here. When Saki is quiet and not saying or pursuing her feelings, it hurts to watch/read because there's nothing holding her back besides her own internalized shame about wanting these things. When Saki is loud and abrasive, it's also upsetting because she's terrified of losing the person she loves most in the world. So what does Saki want that she's so ashamed of? Well, she wants to kiss and sex her boyfriend, mainly, and other generally romantic things too. The primary obstacle, of course, is her shame. She wants to do things, but she's too embarrassed to communicate her wants. The other obstacle is a little more complicated, and we'll get to it later, put a pin in it. But for now, let's talk about the differences and similarities between how Saki and Naoya think of sexuality, and how these exacerbate her shame. So starting off, Saki believes her own sexuality is shameful, dirty. She's slow to admit she wants most anything related to it and tends to arrange situations so that she does not end up committing to anything too sexual or romantic. The thing is, she also believes that her own value as a woman, as a person, is determined by both her sexual desirability and her ability to satiate male sexuality. Saki believes that men inherently want sex, and that her boyfriend having not sexed her yet is proof that he, on some level, may not love her. She tries very hard to find out how to get him to sex her before the story starts, to no avail, because if he did sex her, that would be proof of his love and his desire to be with her. On the other hand, Naoya, to put it bluntly, believes that male sexuality is evil. While Saki is ashamed of her desires, Naoya fully believes it is harmful and wrong to act on his own. Naoya will openly admit his desires, then say he knows it's wrong to want such things, and thus will be repressing them. Like Saki, he has no conception that his partner's nor anyone else of her gender's sexuality is in any way bad. The conflict is that he very much does not believe he, as a man, should be sexing his partner. His desire to put off sex indefinitely runs up against Saki's desire for validation through sex, resulting in her often feel less than and unloved. In one instance, when Saki is able to admit that she wants to be lovey-dovey, wants to kiss every day for little to no reason, Naoya just keeps sitting there, because as much as he appreciates and accepts Saki's feelings, he can't bring himself to reciprocate them physically. For Saki's part, she can't bring herself to follow through either. She can't be the one to initiate. Not when she's the girl and he's the guy, who, from her point of view, finds her unkissable and unsexable. Of course, they're both wrong. Sex is fine to want, regardless of your gender, and sex is also not proof of love. And, kissing isn't dirty, for boys or girls, or NBs, either. On the romantic side, Saki's desires are rather traditional, that is to say, heavily informed by traditional societal ideals of romance. Just like her sexual desires and hang-ups. That her worth in a relationship is determined by her male partner enjoying her sexually, and that her female sexual desires are dirty. These are also traditional. Saki wants, or wanted, a traditional monogamous relationship. before she was pressured into the polycule. This is a sticking point for recommending girlfriend because that inciting incident, where Saki is mistreated despite the best of intentions, takes nearly a whole manga to address, but it does in fact address it. See, at the end of most arcs, Naoya will be talking to Saki and ask if his latest actions have succeeded in fully convincing her that two-timing can work out, if they can make her happy. In response, Saki tends to answer non-committally, say that she definitely loves Naoya, and then change the subject abruptly. The reason she does that is she's stuck between honestly loving him and feeling lonely in the relationship. And for a long time, it seems that Saki doesn't even really know how she feels about it, vaguely wanting to keep things going, but feeling some obvious but mostly unspoken reservations about it all. When Saki does run away, it's Nagisa forcing Naoya to confront Saki's real concerns that gets her back. Saki had been feeling unworthy, like she had nothing to offer Naoya, and he had kept telling her that she didn't need to do anything. Nagisa tells him to shut up and listen for once, that she understands and shares Saki's concerns at times. So Naoya changes. He accepts the girls and praises them for it. It's a good start, but it doesn't dispel the entirety of Saki's distress, unfortunately. For a long while, Saki talks to other people about polyamory being weird and bad and off-putting, and continuously gets thrown off when they're okay with it. Nagisa, Mirika, even Shino eventually are all okay with polyamory. Eventually, she tells her whole class she's in a polycule, hoping that everyone will confirm her initial thoughts, that polyamory is bad and shouldn't be done, but instead everyone's chill. They ask her if she's there by choice, and when she says she is, they say, whatever, your life, do what you want. And Saki is devastated. She's so meek about this kind of thing that it would have been so easy to rely on anyone else, especially a whole group of her peers, to decide for her where to land on this relationship. But she's denied that easy out. Finally, she has nowhere else to run, no one else who can decide for her, and she has to confront her true feelings instead of maintaining this holding pattern. And she doesn't want to do this. She kind of hoped that it would go away on its own. The truth is, she feels lonely. She hates seeing someone else receive love and affection that she thought was all for herself. And to drive the nail in, when she and Naoya talked one-on-one, he loudly refuses to even look at her body. Well, he eventually said he would if she looked at him first, but then her anxiety ran up against her shame, and the anxiety won. But there's another feeling, and it comes up when she tries to initiate a kiss, but just can't do it. Let's pull that pin out now. It's her guilt for wanting to monopolize Naoya and take him away from Nagisa and Shino, when they've been so kind. And that's not really a new feeling, but she first understands it only in that moment. Part of what's been holding Saki back from embracing her desires has definitely been internalized shame about her sexuality in general. But as she's grown closer to Nagisa, as Nagisa and Shino have grown closer to her and Naoya, that guilt has been coming into play as well. Whenever she wants to kiss Naoya, there's multiple layers impeding her. The inherent shame she feels for wanting lewd things, and then the guilt of wanting to do them with Naoya herself, alone, leaving the other girls to the wayside. When Saki sees other girls kiss Naoya, she feels something is being taken from her. So that's how she ends up thinking about her kissing him, too. Saki only managed to kiss Naoya that one time because she was too relieved at finding him alive to worry about all that nonsense. It's a lot for a girl to deal with, and the way it's all resolved, actually put another pin in that. First we need to talk about Saki being bi. The Saki is bi interlude. Saki's shown again and again to hold herself back from embracing her desires. But if you've seen or read the story, you might be thinking that's not entirely accurate. See, there are actually lots of times when Saki neither holds back nor seems to be acting out of anxiety and expressing herself, and that's with other girls. Saki openly talks about wanting to date Nagisa. She occasionally gropes other girls, but especially her best friend Shino, and she pretty well is unbridled in all the ways she's not when it comes to Naoya. It would be easy to think this is the result of compulsory heterosexuality, that she's only truly into girls, so freezes up when it comes to the one boy in her life. But I find there's a more interesting, and to me, more supported reading. She's bi. First things first, Saki does love and feel attraction towards Naoya. While she spends most of the Shino beach arc anxious about kissing him, in the end she's too relieved Naoya is alive for her anxiety, shame, or guilt to stop her from kissing the one she loves. If her unfiltered instinct were exclusively being attracted to girls, there's no reason for her to kiss him there. The thing about Saki, though, is she doesn't get anxious or ashamed or guilty about her feelings for girls because she hasn't been taught to think of them in the same way as her feelings for boys. Put another way, Saki doesn't know that bisexuality is real. She knows she likes how girls look, she knows she likes touching them, and that, in theory, oh, if only, dating a girl would be cool. But that's as far as it goes. In an early chapter, when Saki is worrying over Nagisa offering so much more than she does to Naoya, being more attractive than her, Saki lets out that she wishes Nagisa were dating her, and when Nagisa is shocked and confused, Saki quickly backtracks, because no, of course that's not a thing people can do. None of the characters treat girls liking girls as a real possibility, but it's especially rough for Saki because she does like girls. A lot. After Saki kisses Naoya for the first time, Shino confesses finally to Naoya, and Saki, dejectedly, says that she was expecting Shino to confess to her. Shino says of course not, and Saki's left with another lesson that liking girls romantically and sexually can't happen if you're a girl. Of course girls can and do romosexually like other girls, but Saki doesn't know that yet, so she keeps on ignorantly throwing herself at the girls in her life, while also not fully pursuing them either, suffering in a way she can't even articulate when other people reinforce her beliefs. Worth noting that the reason Saki is okay with herself groping girls, but not girls kissing Naoya, both things which happen without consent, is likely because she doesn't think they're on the same level, even though her thing is arguably way worse. A huge obstacle in the polycule is that Saki can only think of Nagisa as a rival and not a partner, because that's how she's been raised to think of other girls in relationships. It gets slowly better, very slowly, but surely. And then, many groped boobs and long, agonizing gazes later... End of interlude. Saki has borne her heart to Naoya, Nagisa, and Shino, and in response she is told that if it really is too much, they'll back off and let her be monogamous. Saki knows they love Naoya, so she wonders why they do this for her, someone who's supposed to be in competition with them. And Nagisa tells her, it's because they love her. And then Nagisa says she doesn't mean it in a weird way. Like I said, these people don't know that sapphicness is real. The story itself, though, makes it clear, as Saki cries out in response that she loves them too, that it knows what's really going on. At long last, Saki wipes her eyes and says that she wants to carry on with the polycule, because while it does still make her feel a little bit lonely seeing someone else receive affection from her boyfriend, it hurts a lot less to see someone she loves receive that affection. By the finale, Saki is explicitly dating all the girls Naoya is dating. Yay! And with the source of her guilt gone, having talked out their feelings, Saki can that much more freely pursue her desires with Naoya, though he keeps up the sex ban. Saki really grows a lot over the course of the story, maybe more than anyone else. Her problems last and require real communication to overcome. She may still have some internalized misogyny to unlearn, and some consent stuff to learn for the first time, but that's to be expected. She's still young. I'm really glad Saki got to be happy in the end. Now that we know the characters so well, let's look at some of the themes that keep cropping up. Determination. So, Girlfriend has a lot of determined characters, and determination is a driving force in the story. It's what got Naoya and Saki together, it's what got Nagisa and Naoya together, and it's Naoya's determination to make the polyamorous relationship work that decides a great deal of his actions. That last one is the big positive example. Trying your hardest to make those you love happy is indeed a good thing. What's less good is Naoya's foil, Mirika, and her determination. As I touched on a bit earlier, while Naoya is determined to make his girlfriends happy, Mirika is determined to make herself happy, specifically by splitting up Naoya and the other girls. You get to the part where Mirika starts really trying to get with Naoya and think, determination is admirable, but the thing she's aiming at is bad. So already, determination is at best neutral. You've got to be determined to do something, and that something is not always noble. In comes Shino, who does have a noble goal, which happens to be quite similar to Mirika's. Split up Naoya and Nagisa so that her best friend Saki will be happy once more. She has enough insight into Saki to know that she is suffering, and she is, but of course, Naoya still fights back with his own determination. He gives reasons that this can still work out, that it can make everyone happy. And then we learn that Shino has an ulterior motive, that she wants to break Nagisa and Naoya up so that she won't herself feel tempted to be with her best friend's boyfriend, and that maybe paints things a little more gray yet again. There's also Shino's eventual determination to confess to Naoya during the time she believes Saki doesn't truly love him. That determination is actually good, I think. It's about having the courage to be honest about your feelings, even when things are complicated. She needs a little bit of encouragement from Naoya's own determination to stop from running away from such a scary situation, but it does work out in the end. Beyond that point, the contrast between Mirika and Shino progresses. Now Shino's trying to impress Naoya so that she can join the polycule, while Mirika continues to impress him so that she can be his only girlfriend. Going back a bit, though, we're shown through Nagisa that determination is not always enough to achieve one's own goals. Remember, Nagisa has a learning disability, making it so that no matter how hard she tries at almost anything, she won't get, better at it. This isn't a failing on her part, it's simply how Nagisa's brain operates. As it happens, she's good at one thing, cooking, a skill that she gained by allowing herself a great deal of time to learn how, and by neglecting nearly every other aspect of her life. It wasn't really the determination that won out there. Adding to that concept, when Naoya's mother comes home briefly and gets told about the situation and how Naoya is trying his hardest to make it work, she simply asks, "How long will you be trying for?" It stuns everyone to, for the first time, consider that infinite determination with no end marked is just not going to work. In response to this, Naoya does set a goal. He's going to get the top scores on the upcoming exam, to prove that he has what it takes to become a good boyfriend and make this work. You might notice that's not something related to the relationship, so even if he can reach that goal, he won't be any closer to creating the happy polyamorous relationship he wants for everyone. This is more of that misaimed determination. Naoya's standard approach to tests and exams actually serves as a kind of metaphor for determination in a larger sense. Naoya will cram, trying to remember study material through sheer determination, and what usually happens is he gets middling scores in school. In this case, he does get the top score, so it's clear determination on its own can work out, but a lot of the time it's more neutral. It's also around that time he agrees to let Mirika live with all of them to prove his resolve against hers, an idea neither his girlfriends nor Shino is particularly happy about, but his will is too strong to oppose, so they go with it. Speaking of bad ideas, Mirika has been exercising her determination through such means as trespassing, blackmail, kidnapping, and more. Lots of determination in a bad way going on here. Throughout it all, everyone is quick to note how admirable the sheer amount of determination is from her and Naoya, though. To these characters, determination is maybe the most impressive thing there is. Naoya's impressed with Mirika's determination in her YouTube career, as well as in trying to win him over. Nagisa and Shino fell in love with Naoya in the first place for how determined he was in asking Saki out over and over. And Saki and Nagisa both try their hardest, and at times cheer each other on in their attempt to surpass each other in competing for Naoya's affection. It really is idealized. But of course, all that's been happening in the story has shown you, the reader, that it's not always the best. About halfway through the manga, Mirika has handcuffed Naoya to herself, and Naoya is trying to retrieve the key. Naoya tells her he absolutely will not ever say yes, so if she keeps pursuing him, she'll end up getting hurt. Honest and noble-hearted Naoya cares even about his current enemy. It's quite heartening. The thing is, she doesn't heed those words. She just keeps on trying and trying, determined as ever. This will come back later. In the second to last arc, Saki has finally been able to untangle her emotions and understands and communicates that she is not happy in the polycule. Naoya spends every day knocking on Saki's door, getting told by her mum that she's still not ready to see him, and trying again the next day. In the meantime, Shino and Nagisa talk things over and come up with a plan of their own. Once Saki is ready to talk, it's not Naoya's determination that wins out, it's Nagisa and Shino declaring their love for her, and telling her that because they love her, they will give up on being in a polycule if that's what really makes her the happiest. They didn't tell Naoya this plan because they knew his determined nature would never allow for the possibility of giving up. Of course, Saki stays in the polycule. even allows Shino in as well, but it worked because she was shown the kind of love she felt she was missing, the lack of which was making her feel lonely, not Naoya's sheer determination. One could say it was a combination of determined and open communication that worked in the end, perhaps. Then, in the final arc, Mirika is nearing the end of her allotted time to get Naoya to pick her over everyone else, and it really is everyone else now since Shino has joined the polycule. She puts everything into proving how strong her determination is. She gets over 10,000, then over 1 million subs on YouTube by taking on an absurdly treacherous survival trail on her own. Everyone seems to admire her determination. So this must work, right? Well, no, I've been over this before. Naoya's determination is just a little stronger than Mirika's, so when he accepts her, but only as another girlfriend in the polycule, she caves. She cries in Naoya's arms and accepts that she'll be sad a lot in the relationship, and then the story ends with them still together. Mirika kept on determinedly pursuing Naoya, and she got hurt. It hammers home the idea that the whole story has been returning to over and over again. Determination is not inherently good. And let's be clear, it's not inherently bad either. Naoya did manage to make his other girlfriends happy a lot because of his determination. He takes them on dates, he rebukes Mirika until the end. He works a part-time job to help with money. He helps them with school and personal problems. But it's not the be-end end-all like the characters think it is. It's not the most important thing. It's one thing that has nuance to it, that can be done for good or evil, effectively or ineffectively. In a world where many stories champion unlimited determination as the trait of noble heroes, it's nice to see a more nuanced depiction for once. Honesty. The other of Naoya's defining character traits is honesty, and unlike with determination, it is definitely a good thing all throughout the story. Honesty is well regarded as a virtue generally, sure, but Girlfriend takes aim at the cases where people are more or less expected to lie or hide things from one another. Presented first to the reader, a boy tells his girlfriend that he has fallen in love with another girl, and that he wants to date them both at the same time. Socially, this is taboo, obviously. You're supposed to only love your current partner, and if you do find yourself thinking of another person romantically, you're expected to not bring it up. Furthermore, in saying he wants to be with both of them, he's breaking another expectation, that while men are presumed to be always horny and want such things on some level, they are meant to repress such urges, keep them inside, definitely not talk openly about them, let alone pursue them. First, chronologically, while Naoya is still attempting to court Saki, Shino suggests a commonly repeated dating strategy: play hard to get. Naoya can't do it, however. He can't deceive his beloved into thinking he may have lost interest, even if it might bring him better results, because his priority is being honest about his feelings. It's the story showing honesty as the basis of this relationship, despite social pressures towards deception. And that's great. As was seen with Saki, she is often ashamed of her own desires, and so keeps them inside rather than being open and honest about them. And it clearly hurts her. Shino as well spends a long time keeping her true feelings a secret from everyone, eating away at her every step of the way. The times they are honest, though, that's when they're happy. When Saki is able to express her anxieties, that communication allows for addressing the problems. When Shino finally tells everyone she loves Naoya, they talk about how cool it is, actually, and she doesn't have to worry. And bonus, Mirika loses that secret as a thing to hold over Shino's head. For Mirika's own part, her trickery and deception blatantly gets people hurt. Blackmailing Shino and tricking the polycule into eating drugged food are probably the worst instances. And then there's another twist in the story's presentation of honesty. It's shaped by people's perceptions. For example, when Nagisa says that she believes it's best that she hold back for Saki's sake in the relationship, she does honestly believe that, but it's not what's best for her. When Saki says she's upset that Mirika kissed Naoya before she did, that's honest, but it's not taking into consideration how Naoya feels having had his consent violated. In Saki's mind, it's about the same as if Naoya had initiated it. When Naoya says that the only way he can think to be fair to Nagisa and Saki is to date both of them, abstain from all sex, and tell them they don't need to do anything for him, well, you get the picture. The beliefs people internalize from society, parents, media, these influence how they think and act, and not always for the better. Naoya was raised to believe that honesty is incredibly important, but also that determination is good regardless of context. And this segues pretty well into challenging norms and relationship anarchy. So, about that stuff the characters believe. A lot of what gets them hurt are social norms or otherwise common misconceptions that many people learn very young. The reason Naoya's feelings aren't considered, even by himself, when he's kissed without consent, is because of this pervasive belief that men and boys always want sex and related things. The reason Nagisa hates herself is internalized ableism. The reason Saki treats girls and boys differently is internalized biphobia. The reason Shino initially refuses to be friends with Saki is internalized classism. The reason Mirika forces herself to do sexual stuff, and Saki feels bad for not doing sex, and Naoya feels bad when he does want to do sex, are all internalized sexism and also common messed up ideas of sex in general. Some of these things get addressed, like Naoya convincing Nagisa that she's allowed to go at her own pace, or Saki getting through to Shino that they can be happy together. When social norms are challenged, it makes people happier to be able to live outside their rigid confines. That's enforced by the times things aren't addressed and so continue to result in suffering. The idea that a girl's worth is determined by her attractiveness, exemplified by Saki's worries that she's less than since Naoya won't sex her. The amatonormativity in all the girls, but especially Mirika, believing people can't truly be happy if they're single, and all the girls at various points, including in the epilogue, thinking they have to be rivals in some way because they love the same guy. This all hurts them. Consider now Mirika's career, using her appearance to get views on YouTube. It's something socially generally looked down upon, but most especially in the story, her father does. It's no wonder that Naoya standing up for Mirika's very real hard work gets her to fall in love with him. Naoya is breaking the norm, seeing past the idea of what should be valued or respected, and it makes her happy to be appreciated, naturally. As the story goes on, all the characters develop an even stronger respect for Mirika's work on her YouTube channel, something only possible because they don't immediately dismiss her for being a titty tuber. Which at last brings us to the most prevalent example of a social norm that girlfriend tackles. Polyamory is a bad thing. Now, I say polyamory, but every single character in the story calls it two-timing, because they've grown up in a society that can only conceive of multiple people being with the same partner as cheating. It never is cheating in the story, but characters cling to that term the whole way through, moving up to three-timing and four-timing as Naoya dates more of the girls. Even as Saki tells her class about the polycule, they don't change their language. It's that deeply ingrained that polyamory is never good. While the relationship starts out not so great, it's not because it's poly. It's for the same reason anyone's first relationship is rocky. They don't know what they're doing, they're not communicating well, they have incorrect ideas about each other, etc., etc. These problems are overcome by embracing a style of relationships called relationship anarchy. Relationship anarchy, or RA for short, is, simply put, building relationships to suit the people in them, rather than building relationships to fit social molds of proper relationships. Considering how rigid the characters are in their negative language about polyamory, it definitely qualifies as RA to set up a polycule at all here. A disclaimer, polyamory isn't always RA, and RA is not always polyamory. Beyond that, recall when Naoya is trying to assure his girlfriends they don't need to do anything for him? He says that because at some point, Naoya learned this is a good way to treat people you're dating. While they talk that out, and determine that what works best for them would actually be allowing them opportunities to help him, they do that instead, and that carries through the entire rest of the story. Naoya remarks on and praises his girlfriends for the help they give him, and it's wonderful to see. In regards to Saki and Nagisa's relationship with each other, it starts out as both of them dating Naoya, but not each other. This creates a dynamic where, because of how they've both been raised, they primarily see each other as romantic rivals, despite the obvious reality they're both already with the guy they both like. The dynamic shifts, slowly, to one of friendship, where they only nominally keep up their rivalry. This is better because it means they're both able to be way more comfortable around each other, which they are often, living in the same house after all. Eventually, Saki is dating not just Naoya, but Shino, Mirika, and yes, Nagisa as well. For Nagisa, this means she doesn't have to worry all the time about her affection for Naoya upsetting Saki and potentially ending the relationship. For Saki, this makes her less lonely, as previously described. As a side note, after Shino starts being open about pursuing Naoya, Saki is adamantly refusing to think about that, likely because she doesn't want to be in conflict with her in the way she started out with Nagisa. And hey, turns out she didn't have to. Naoya starts out the relationship being endlessly self-sacrificing, in large part because he feels bad for forcing his polyamorous desires onto Nagisa and Saki. And maybe for some other group of people that would have worked out in the long term, but not for this one. Naoya's behavior causes his girlfriends to worry. As they talk more about it, though, they alter things so that Naoya doesn't give quite so much and takes better care of himself. And it works out not just because it means less worrying for the girls, it also means Naoya himself is healthier and more able to give when the situation does call for more from him. The difference between a pre-designed relationship and one built to satisfy the people in it is beautifully examined in chapter 126, Normal. In it, Saki talks about growing up as a younger child and her expectations of how her life would go. She knew back then that she loved Naoya, her childhood friend, and she saw the monogamous people around her, in real life as well as in media, no doubt, and developed in her mind the idea of a normal happiness. It's what you'd expect. Friends to monogamous dating, to lovers to married, to white picket fence, and maybe 2.5 kids. AKA the relationship escalator. Even as Naoya grew up some and started pushing back against social norms, Saki clinged to this normal happiness as her path in life. But then she got thrown into this polycule and she got so confused about how she could still be happy that way. And I think one of the coolest things Girlfriend does is present this situation where Saki is clearly being hurt by a false notion fed to her by society, that her boyfriend being with someone else means you're losing something, and it says her feelings are valid. Even as all these things are being challenged and tossed aside, Saki's loneliness when she sees Naoya loving Nagisa is still real and still needs to be addressed for the relationship to continue. That is part of the work in building a relationship fit for them all. Part of it, too, is Saki's guilt about wanting a normal happiness, now that she knows how much Shino and Nagisa love Naoya. She reached a point where it's impossible to be happy and stay in that socially acceptable mold of a normal, happy life. And so, through communication, they break that mold and do manage to build a relationship that's good for everyone. It's great to see. The concept of a normal happiness exists in real life, too, though. In an interview with Anime Corner in 2021, Hiroyuki said this: "My stance is that I always try to be critical of the rightness of doing what is commonly thought to be good, and I have been drawing the manga with that thought in mind. When I hear people say, 'You should do this,' or 'You should not do this,' I wonder, is that really true? And is there another way to live? I've been working on the manga with this concept as the backbone of the plot, so I hope the fans feel the same way, even if only slightly." End quote. I certainly feel the same way. Constantly, the story shows that embracing traditionalism and living unquestioningly the way society says everyone should leads to sadness. And conversely, that it's in confronting these common ideas of what's right and wrong that Naoya, Saki, Nagisa, Mirika, and Shino are all able to live happier and more fulfilling lives. Conclusion. Why a tragic ending? Very often while watching and reading Girlfriend, I would cry out, "These kids!" because they would be saying or doing something only because they have some idea that this is the way things are, so it must be right, and getting hurt over it. I think of Nagisa, even after talking to Naoya, running away from what could have been her first kiss because she doesn't know it doesn't have to be perfect. I think of Saki groping her friends because she doesn't know that consent still matters if you're doing gay stuff. I think of Mirika constantly throwing herself at Naoya because she doesn't know that she can be happy single. There are other ways to live. They just need to figure them out and embrace them. And a lot of the misconceptions the characters started with are addressed by the end. But not all of them. In the final chapter of Girlfriend, Saki is still a little anxious about the affection the other girls in the polycule receive. Mirika is still in a relationship type that she doesn't want to be in. Naoya is still not the most aware of his partner's needs and feelings. Shino still can't imagine living a sustainable life outside of traditional jobs. Nagisa's mostly alright in the end, but the point stands. There's more smaller things as well, but I'll leave it there. Also in the finale is a conversation between Naoya and Saki. He tells her how it was her, when she was much younger, being willing to do whatever she wanted no matter what anyone thought, that helped inspire him to be as true to himself as he is now. I cried so hard reading that, because Saki, of course, is not so forthcoming about her desires anymore. Since that unspecified time long ago, Saki learned to be ashamed of herself in some ways, to be more guarded and normal. By the end, she's unlearned some of that, but it goes away to saying, the last big thing I want to cover here, the path to unlearning harmful beliefs, is a long one. The story starts after everyone has already internalized all these ideas, and it ends before they've learned and unlearned everything too. That's because learning about this stuff, how to take care of yourself, understanding and respecting others, that people can live however they want, it's bigger than a single narrative. Learning how to be is a lifelong journey, and these are just kids in their very first relationship. Of course they still have stuff to learn. Of course they need to grow. And you know what? I feel like I maybe focused a lot on the getting hurt part, but in their messy ways, they still manage to grow and make each other happy. You don't have to be perfect, just do your best and learn from your mistakes. I don't super begrudge any of the people who were unable to get through girlfriend, because it is often an uncomfortable experience. They do make bad choices, and they do hurt each other, in more cases than I could reasonably list in this essay. But what I can say is that every time they did, my thought was, if only they knew it didn't have to be this way. It's uncomfortable so that you can feel how the ideas negatively affect them. It's uncomfortable through to the end, so that you know there's always room to grow. It's bittersweet, but not hopeless. They're so young. They have lots of time to learn. And that's all for now. I really do recommend watching and/or reading Girlfriend. As long as this was, I could never cover everything, like Mirika's growth and one of the greatest strengths of this art, which is the viscerality of experiencing the character's suffering and subsequent joys. Thanks for watching to the end. Bye!